Dear students, we are going to see the very interesting lesson. It is an encouraging, motivational, and indeed, it tells us, it teaches us how to learn, how to carry on education. A perfect method of teaching has been mentioned here. Here, the writer has mentioned his own experience in this lesson, that how a great personality tried to teach him how to understand a particular topic. In this lesson, it has been mentioned that the writer was not at all interested. The writer doesn't have any kind of interest or love or liking to the topic. And the writer's opinion was that he was a tone deaf. It means the writer was sure that he was unable to understand the topic. And a great personality has mentioned and created interest in the writer. So the great personality has mentioned that what are the steps. He had given one example, that if you want to learn multiplication or division, first of all you will have to learn addition and subtraction. So that is the basic thing, to learn multiplication and division. If you wish to learn the division, first of all you must be able to subtract. You must be able to do the basic activities. You must be aware about the numbers, about the tables. So writer explained or shared his experience, how he started learning classical music. So, good morning. Today we are going to learn a lesson from standard 10, that is 3.2. The title of the lesson is The Night I Met Einstein. See the title, The Night. So night is a common noun, but here it is used the definite article. It means it is a particular night when the writer met Einstein. The writer's name is Jeroen Widman, who was born in the year 1913 and passed away in the year 1998. He was an American playwright and novelist. Playwright means one who writes plays, dramas. In 1960, he won the Pulitzer Prize for his work. A musical drama titled, means named, Farewell. He collaborated with George Abbott, Jerry Bojack, and Sheldon Harnick, too, for its music and lyrics. His book, I Can Get It For You Wholesale, has also been used for a movie of the same name. It means the writer's book. What is the name of the book? I Can Get It For You Wholesale. Has also been used for a movie, for making a film of the same name. Now we are going to start the actual lesson. When I was a very young man, I was invited to dine at the house of a philanthropist. In this sentence, when I was a very young man is a subordinate clause. It is adverb clause of time. So writer says, when he was a very young man, he was invited to dine. Dine means to have dinner at the house of a philanthropist. Philanthropist means lover of all humankind, one who donates to the human, one who helps the human for their betterment. After a wonderful dinner, our hostess means a woman who invites a guest to a social event. So after a wonderful dinner, our hostess took us to a large drawing room. Chairs were being arranged. So in that room, already the chairs were being arranged. I am arranging the chairs for a concert. Concert means performance of music by players or singers. That is a musical program. My hostess said, what she said? I am arranging the chairs for a concert. We are going to listen to a very good pianist. Pianist means someone who plays the piano. Piano is a musical instrument. Though everyone else was very happy, I was not. So writer says, at that moment everyone was very happy, but the writer was not. I did not understand classical music. So here the writer has mentioned why wasn't he happy? Because he didn't understand classical music. Classical means which is played following the rules and regulations. I thought I was tone deaf. Tone deaf means unable to hear the difference between high and low notes of music. So writer thought that he was a tone deaf. I sat down so that I would not be impolite and waited for the concert to begin. So here the writer mentions that he was not eager to listen the music, but he didn't want to be impolite. Impolite means arrogant, rude. That's why the writer waited for the concert to begin, to start. In this sentence, to begin is an infinitive. I didn't pay attention to the music after it began. When the music started, the writer didn't pay attention towards it. So here the writer has clearly mentioned that he doesn't like the music because he thinks that he was a tone deaf. So he didn't pay attention when the music started. After a while means after some time, I heard everyone clapping. So writer heard the sound of clapping, that everybody started clapping. So I realized that the piece was over. So because of the clapping sound, the writer guessed that the piece of music was over. Just then, I heard a gentle means soft, but firm voice saying, "You're fond of Bach?" So see, who's Bach? Bach means Johann Sebastian Bach, a German organist and composer of the 17th century. So, at that time, a firm voice asked, "You're fond of Bach?" See, the sentence is in assertive form, but at the end there is a question mark. So it must be read as a question in that tone of the question. "You're fond of Bach?" I knew as much about Bach as I did about nuclear physics. I was going to say something ordinary so that I could get out of the situation. The writer was not knowing much more about Bach, so he was going to say something ordinary, that is common, general, so that I could get out of the situation. I turned in order to look at my neighbor, and I saw a very famous face. So writer turned towards the next seat, and he came to know that there was a very famous face. It was someone with a shock of white hair and a pipe. The next one was a person with a shock of white hair and a pipe. I knew that I must tell this man the truth. So writer knew that he must tell this man the truth. He looked at me as if my answer was very important. The writer's neighbor started looking at the writer as if writer's answer was very important. I do not know anything about Bach, I said. I've never heard any of his music. He looked surprised. So when the writer mentioned that he didn't hear much more about Bach, and the writer have never heard any of his music, the neighbor looked surprised. That the neighbor was shocked. You have never heard of Bach? Again he asked. He made it sound as if I had said that I had never taken a bath. The reaction of the neighbor was very different. He made it sound as if I had said that I'd never taken a bath. I'd like to understand music so that I could understand Bach. See, look at the sentence. I'd like to understand. So I apostrophe D means I would. So I would like to understand means I want to understand music so that I could understand Bach. I said, but I am not able to. I am tone deaf. The writer has clearly mentioned. The old man got up. So the neighbor got up, that is stood up, and he asked, you will come up with me? I just remained seated. So when the neighbor asked that will you come up with me, at that time the writer sat down there as it was. I am requesting you to come with me, he said again. When the writer didn't respond, the neighbor again repeated and said, I am requesting you to come with me. So I went up with him. He took me to a room which had a gramophone in it and asked, what kind of music do you like? So gramophone means machine for playing recorded music. And then the neighbor asked, what kind of music do you like? I answered, well, I like songs that have words and the kind of music where I can follow the note, where I can follow the tune. The writer replied that I like such songs where there are words and the kind of music where I can follow the tune. He smiled and nodded. Nodded means moved head up and down to indicate agreement. So the neighbor also smiled and positively shook his neck, obviously pleased. Obviously means clearly. The neighbor was happy. You can give me an example, perhaps. And he asked, can you give me one example? Perhaps I told him I like anything by Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby is an American singer and actor. At once, I could hear Bing Crosby's voice filling the room, and at the same moment, the writer could get the sound of that Bing Crosby, who was an American singer and actor. Now, can you please tell me what you just heard? He said. And then he asked the question. Can you please tell me? It means, are you able to please tell me what you just heard? The simplest answer seemed to be to sing the lines. So I sang it back to him. The answer was simple. So the writer sang to him. He smiled and said, "You're not tone deaf," he said. And the neighbor said, as a response, "You're not tone deaf." I told him this was one of my favorite songs, something I had heard hundreds of times, so it didn't really prove anything. Writer explained and said that I heard the song hundreds of times, so it didn't really prove anything. Einstein said, "Nonsense. It proves everything." Do you remember your first arithmetic lesson in school? At that moment, Einstein said, "Nonsense, you don't have any type of sense. It proves everything." Do you recall your first arithmetic lesson in school? Suppose at your very first contact with numbers, your teacher had ordered you to work out a problem in, say, long division or fraction. Fraction is part of whole number, small part or amount. Could you have done it? Einstein asked the question to the writer that could you have done it? The writer said, "No, of course not." So Einstein said, "Exactly, it's like learning maths. Exactly, in the same way when you heard something first time. So we are unable to solve that. You have to learn addition and subtraction in order to do multiplication and division." So here he explained and said, if you want to learn multiplication and division, first of all you will have to learn addition and subtraction. Now I am playing something a little more advanced. And he said, now I am going to play something a little more advanced. I was John McCormack singing the trumpeto. "Sing that back," he ordered. And then he ordered, "Sing that back." And we went on from level to higher level until he was playing just music without words. And in this way we carried on till he was playing just music without words. I was amazed, I was surprised that this great man was paying complete attention to me so that I could learn something new. So why was the person giving complete attention to me? It was his purpose, it was his intention that I could learn something new. It was as if I was the most important person in his world. Bracket the sentence. I was the most important person in his world. This sentence can be there in the exam for change the degree. Look at the sentence. There is most used before the adjective, and before most there is though. It shows that the sentence is of superlative degree. Suddenly means unexpectedly. He got up and turned off the gramophone. And then he turned off, means switched off the gramophone and said, "Now, young man, we are ready to listen to Bach." And then he said, "Young man, now we are ready to listen to Bach." We went down and sat in the hall. Then we went down and sat in that hall. I've heard that piece many times since that day, but I'm never alone. So here he said that I've heard that piece many times, means frequently. Since that day I'm never alone. I'm sitting beside a small man with a shock of untidy hair and a pipe in his mouth. Then the writer came to know that he was sitting beside a small man with a shock of untidy hair and a pipe in his mouth. At that time, he has eyes that are unusually warm. Unusually means not usually. When the concert ended, concert means a musical program. We have already seen. When the musical program was over, I too was able to clap sincerely. At that time, the writer was also able to clap sincerely, means honestly. The writer also understood what was going on. Our hostess came towards us. We both stood up. And then, when the concert over, the writer's hostess, the lady who invited him, came towards them, and the writer and his neighbor both stood up. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Einstein," she said, giving me a cold look, "that you missed so much." And then the lady said, "Dr. Einstein, I'm so sorry, means I'm very sorry. I feel very sad." And she continued and said, giving me a cold look, "that you missed so much." "I am sorry too," he said. And as a reply, Dr. Einstein also said that he was sorry too. "My young friend here and I, however, were engaged in the greatest activity of which a human being is capable." And he explained that he himself and the writer was engaged in the greatest activity of which a human being is capable. So he proved that what is the capacity of a human being. She looked puzzled. "Really?" she said. "And what's that?" So when she heard this, she was puzzled, means confused. She didn't come to know, and said, "Really? Indeed? And what was that? In which activity were you engaged?" Einstein smiled and put his arm across my shoulders and said, "Opening up the frontiers of beauty." And what reply he gave? That we were busy in opening up the frontiers, means boundaries of beauty. So in this way, the writer wished to